Good day, and welcome back to another episode of Wrenching with Rob. It's been a couple of days, weeks, I think, since I've mashed out a video to you guys, and I apologize. I've been a little busy. The old coronavirus is changing things up a little bit, kind of how we do things as well. So, as you can see, it's had a little effect. My face has started to grow out some more, and in between the working emails and telephone calls and the working at the home, so I've had time to acquire more projects for Wrenching with Rob here. One of which is this 1965 Mustang convertible 289 with a manual 3-speed. So without further ado, I will take you around and give you some insights on what's going on here. I actually got about 4 or 5 projects going on at the same time, and some of these I'll give you some updates on. Kind of bounce around. You know, I should really finish some stuff and keep up on one, but it's too easy for me to just wander around and play a little bit on each one, especially when you get a little stuck or stumped or broke, or you just get tired of it after a while and you're like, gotta move on to something else for a little bit, keep my sanity. So I'm gonna pick you guys up and walk you around here and show you what's going on. So we'll start off with this monstrosity behind me. So hopefully not too wobbly and nasty. So you might see that there's a lot of colors of these wire things just hanging around here. Let's see if we can get you a little more straight. Lots of these wire looking things. You know, these old cars didn't have a whole lot of wires, or you would think, because they don't have all that sophistication stuff going on like these new ones do with their Bluetooth, excuse me, and all that. But there's actually quite a few more wires in here than you think. So obviously you guessed it, what's going on with this one is a rewire. The owners had worked a rewire on it before and had done a really good job with it, but they had asked me to repair some things that didn't work. And I'm the kind of guy that if I touch it, first of all, I want everything to work because I'm kind of OCD about that. And also, if I touch it, I want to know that everything that I touch works properly. So we've undone this here, what was on it before, the plastic, whatchamacallit stuff, and the zip ties, and we're going to go through and take stuff like this. Whoop, I should probably hold on. So if you look at this, focus. So crimped on there pretty good. And since this is one of the, like, I think it even says on here, if you could read that, let's get in on it. That's like one of the super hot wires that feeds everything under the dash. So we're going to go through and solder all that so that it doesn't come loose. Make sure it's all happy. And then we're going to reroute some of these wires. Not that this orange wire was laid up over the struts before. I just laid it across there because originally it ran on the driver's side of the car, on this side, and we're going to make it come around the passenger side. But we're going to make it all pretty and tucked up out of the way, and hopefully eliminate the possibility of it chafing and causing ultimate catastrophe. So what I've also done is they asked me to get it running. The motor had been worked on and had some work done inside, and consequently it had not run since it was put back together, which is always a fun task to take on. But everything was done pretty well, except that obviously it had not been run. So we initially started off with it. I know this is a lot of focusing on the same project or the same picture here, but so we pulled the distributor out because we thought maybe the timing was off, and I did if you look way down here, let's see if we can do this without light. So way down here at the bottom where my paw is pointing is that's the harmonic balancer, and on there, and I can't even see it now, so if you're looking for it, don't worry about it. Most of you car guys know that there's some marks on there, and that's where you time the distributor. You know, you turn it back and forth, and hopefully everything's happy and they cooperate, and it makes the big sparks that cause the explosions in each of the cylinders at the right time, or at least the optimal time. So you time it from here, and then there's supposed to be a little pointer thing there, but there isn't. So what I was attempting to do was find the top dead center by rotating the spinning thing down here, and then taking this number 1 spark plug out. Yeah, I know you Chevrolet guys like that orange color, but I'm more into the blue ones just because I worked on them so much in the past. Maybe that's a sign if I've worked on them too much. Anyway, you're supposed to put your paw or your digit over the hole and turn it until it goes whoosh and blows your thumb off, and that tells you that number 1 is on its compression stroke and nearing its top dead center. When it's at the top dead center, hopefully well, let's take apart one. Let's move back over here for a minute. We'll get the old one. Whoop, smashed, noise. We'll get this one here out. This is the old distributor. We'll take them apart, maybe. There's 1, there's 2. We know if this bounces around too much. We'll take the old distributor cap off, and we'll look at this from above. So here's the rotor button, and hopefully when the number 1 spark plug, or excuse me, piston is at its top dead center, or just before it, this rotor button is lined up with, if you look down there, right there, there's a little one, it might be upside down, with that point on the distributor, which hopefully, if you got firing order right, coincides with this little spark plug wire distributor type thing, or spark wire. I'm just going to call it a spark plug wire because that's what it is. So that was the issue all along. We were trying to make sure that the firing order was right by lining all that stuff up. The problem we were having is when I put my finger over the hole and turned the motor over, nothing happened, which is kind of a big deal, meaning that there's absolutely no compression. So I probably should have filmed all this, but you'd have been bored to tears watching me take all of these nuts and bolts out, because what we did is we took the whole front of the motor apart because we wanted to make sure that the crankshaft, which spins a chain back behind here, behind the timing cover, was connected to the camshaft, and all of those things were cooperating well with each other and lined up and timed with the way they're supposed to have been, which they were. So the next thing we went to is we took the valve covers off and made sure that the rockers that do this, hence the term rocker, were being pushed up by the push rods that are going up and down like this, and actually indeed rocking and opening the valves, which they were. Obviously, if the chain is connected, yes. Actually, I did that first before I tore it all apart down here, and they were moving. That should have been an indication though. So I went to the extreme and took everything apart, all the fuel pump off, the alternating device off, all this happiness down here, and took the radiator out. It's a nice pretty radiator they got going on. Oh, electric fan right there, super cool looking catch bottle. So anyway, long story short, took it all apart, everything's timed, rockers are moving. So the next thing I went to is maybe the rockers are too tight. So I backed them off, and lo and behold, I had compression. So went back through, spark timed it, got it running, and then we had trouble with it running pretty bad. So if you watch some of my other videos, I talk about these. Let's see if I can do this. Let's pull this rotor button off. Sorry. Whoop. So these little thingies that are, if I can do this with one paw, the breaker points right there, right where my finger is pointing, have to open and shut with these lobes on here. So when they open, that's when you break down the connection between the coil, this is the ground for the coil, and that thing right there, that long cylindrical thing, if I can get it, that thing right there. And when that happens, it sends fire out through the big wire right here into the center of the distributor. And hopefully, if all this stuff is lined up the way this is pointing, it's pointing towards whatever cylinder is supposed to be firing. And this thing is opening. All of that stuff has to be timed perfectly. Well, these old Fords or these old cars that use these breaker points right here, if those points are burned or they're made of tungsten, but they arc every time they come together. They arc. And then they pit and corrode, and pretty soon that tiny little gap that's supposed to be, you know, smaller than my finger here, it's about 17 to 20 thousandths. That gap becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually it's not firing when it's supposed to, or it's firing at the wrong time. So to combat that problem of it burning, you're supposed to have either a ballast resistor, or B, a high resistance wire that runs this right here from the, or actually I think it's the high resistance wires on the coil side, the positive feed right here, that limits your voltage to the coil down to from 12 volts or 13.6 or whatever the battery, which is not in here right now. It limits that battery voltage down to around 6 to 9 to 10 or something like that. Anyway, it's a lot smaller amount. And when you do that, there's less voltage, amperage, however you want to look at it, here at these points, and they don't burn. And what was happening is the points had been burned up, or the breaker points right here, and consequently it was firing at the wrong time. So to eliminate that yearly process of having to replace those, we put in an electronic ignition here. So the electronic ignition doesn't use these breaker points anymore, mechanical. It uses what they call a Hall effect, and it has a lobe type system like this, but instead of these being metal lobes, they're just like metal bars, and there's 8 of them, and it kind of looks like a star, an 8-pointed star. And then there's a little pickup that sits right here, and each time, whoops, got you out of the range there, I got to pay attention to what I'm doing. Each time one of those bars comes across that pickup, it says, hey, coil, fire right now. And that's basically like the points opening like this. So eliminates all that mechanical crap, and now this thing can pretty much sit in there for life. The only thing you'd ever have to replace is it still uses a rotor button type stuff like this, where there's actual contact here, and then of course the spark jumps from here to the inside of the cap. So the cap and the rotor are the only replaceable items now in this. It still has a mechanical advance inside it with springs, and it also has obviously the vacuum advance. So that made the thing really, really run. We went through and cleaned out the carburetor. They had already put a kit into it, which they had done correctly. Everything was good. I just made sure, and I ran it through my ultrasonic cleaner to make sure that all the yuck inside was out. And you know, any stuff that gets down into the ports and jets and things like that from sitting, because it had sat about 2 years. And everybody knows with today's gasoline, it's just not the most cooperative when you leave it set. So a lot of the big stuff's already done, the routing's done. It's just a matter of putting tiny little zip ties on there, and then we're going to run it in this type of stuff here. This loom that if you look right, you can actually see through it. It's a plastic loom, and then let's see if we can do this on camera. You can expand it or contract it, and it also is split. But the good part about this is it wraps all the way around. I don't know if you can, let's see if we can get you into the light. It wraps around it very, very well, as opposed to the plastic yuck that has the single split like this, and it just comes together. I like this stuff a whole lot better. It seems to hold, and just all in all, it's a little more cooperative. So we've taken everything apart, as you can see here. Took the headlights out, and are working on putting the grounds in a little bit better location. So if we walk around to the side of it, we took the engine encapsulator, aka the hood, off because I got tired of bending over underneath the hood. Here's the back side of the dash, and we're going to go through and probably replace these solderless connectors with the solder type so that we know they'll never come off, and then heat shrink everything because I like heat shrink. So as you can see, maybe if we have enough light here, tip you up. There's a lot of wires. I don't know why there's so many wires for this car. There's not that many systems, but I guess it's quite a few more than what the Jeep had. And it's probably getting kind of dark down there. They're in the process of restoring it, making it all pretty and beautiful again. So there's a lot of things missing at the moment. But, you know, the shell's there. So we're just going to help them out and do all this since we have the patience, or at least I'll have the patience until I walk away from it for a little bit. So lots more wires and headlights and things like that. I'm not going to do any of this top work. That's way beyond my scope. Some of you say, well, I would rather do top work than do wires. But I'm telling you, nope, I'd rather do wires because I know there's an end in sight. And it runs just beautiful now with that electronic ignition. And the carburetor's all adjusted. A little bit more choke work to do. The problem with it is it does not have an electronic choke. So with it not having electronic choke, it's supposed to use heat off either the heater hose, which if you look, that's supposed to be where the heater goes, and that's where the heater goes right there. That's the fan, electric fan switch. And if you look back there, right down there under those wires, those are blocked off. So the heater hose would run through here, and then also I think it's, let's see if we can get you in there. Back there somewhere where my paw is where it gets heat off the manifold. So as this part here is the choke, and as it warms up, there's a bimetallic strip in there that uncoils or coils, I can't remember, it does one of the two, and it rotates this, which eventually will rotate the choke open if you saw that move. Like that. That's the plan anyway. And right now, of course, it's set on high idle. So as it warms up, if the choke never warms up here, it will never open it up, and you'll run on high idle and choke forever. And you'll start to run angry. New cars with your fuel injection, you don't have to deal with any of that because they have a cold air circuit or whatever they call that stuff. So yeah, we're going to replace this with pretty like we did in the Jeep in the last videos I had. So a little update on the rest of the stuff that's going on over here. So when we brought the Model A in, or excuse me, when I brought the Mustang in over here, hopefully that wasn't too fast a movement, I said, yeah, we got a 1930 Model A. It starts every time. Shouldn't have said that, of course. Everybody said the same thing as I said that. Dude, you shouldn't have said that. Because, of course, just like Murphy's Law dictates, whenever anything can go wrong, it will, especially if you talk about it. And the Model A wouldn't start. So we started digging into it. Had to keep kicking this camera. Might not be bright enough. Let's turn the light on. We'll walk over here. Wow, he actually filmed it turning the light switch on. So coming up to the Model A, if you can see in there or not, there's the distributing device, very similar to the one that's in the car, and it also uses breaker points, which we're going to retain in this one. But I cleaned the points because there was no transfer of power between them for the ground, so therefore no spark. And when I did so, I broke the infamous, what they call the black wire that runs underneath it, and now it is grounded permanently. So let's see if we can show this on the old cameras. So this thing is pretty loose when you rotate it, and when I do that, I'm losing a lot of my, you know, the gap between here and here where I'm opening this is very, very minute, and that little bit of slop that's in that distributor can ruin my timing. So I don't think the the distributor's ever been rebuilt, so I'm going to actually tear it apart. It's perfect time for me to rebuild it. It's just, when am I going to get to it? Maybe if I leave the hood open long enough, that'll shame me into working on it. Over here is a, I don't even know what year it is, Honda VTX 1300. It had been setting for a couple of years, and when the owner went to crank it up, naturally the carburetor needle and seat stuck open and dumped gas everywhere. So you have to, he was going to take it somewhere, and I know that those folks that he was going to take it to are very busy doing the same type of thing and working on other bikes. Not to mention they like the Harley and Davidsons. I shouldn't even say it. They would have worked on it either way. It's business, but generally their work is Harley Davidsons. So this guy being a Honda may not have gotten along with the rest of them in there, but yeah, they're good folks. They would have worked on it. So we saved them a little bit of money and took the gas tank off, the seat off, all the 10,000 bolts that hold the air cleaner on, or assembly, air box as they call it, and took the carburetor off, rebuilt it, put it back on, and now it's all happy. And then we had to go through and fix a stripped out bolt on the back. So that's all done. He's going to sell it. It runs, it's jetted for high altitude, or not jetted, it probably just has an air fuel mixture adjustment. So we're going to play with it just a little bit more, but it does run and drive. The Jeep, haven't done anything to the Jeep lately. Been slacking on that quite a bit. Yeah, somebody should give me grief about that, because maybe I'll get to it. So, well, that's probably pretty bright. Over here we have a Honda, I don't even know what size the motor is. Is it probably 250 or 350? Rancher ES. ES being electronic shift, and that is the subject of the problem. The electronic shift doesn't work, and if anybody's ever had one of these, probably experienced the same problem. So we're going through and troubleshooting. We think it's the computer, but I slaved in another computer yesterday and that did not fix it. Although the computer I took out of this one in a working electronic shift did not work. So I think we have two problems going on there. Something to do with one of the other sensors that says I don't like what I'm seeing, so don't work. Basically is how this thing works. It says if something isn't as amiss, the whole system will shut down, which is probably the best thing to do, because if we saw a problem on one, or at least we would probably never fix it unless it didn't work. I guess that's the reason why they do that stuff. So here's our Go Fast electronic distributor. We got no updates on the Jeep. I did sand a little bit on the other side. I haven't sanded at all on this side. I'm thinking that the outside is almost pretty much ready to go. We might just take it apart. Excuse me, that's completely the opposite of what I want to do. Put it back together and put it on the frame out there, and try to, at least get it to where it's not plugging up so much room in my garage. So I'm going to take you back over here. The iron head is good to go, other than, yep, it's definitely not driveway trained. We'll get over here and I want to show you the update on the 200. Whoop, don't look at that. Anything's a rag when you... So here's what we did. If you've watched any of my past videos, I did one episode on a Honda 200 TRX or something like that wouldn't start. And after we got the ignition working, we noticed that, again, another one with no compression. So we took it all apart and found out that it had an angry valve. I can't, you'll have to take my word for it, but this one's bent. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's probably not going to show up on camera, but it's bent. Finally got a valve in for it, and the valve was the exhaust valve over here, the smaller one, and I finally found one that was under 40 bucks. The whole damn unit isn't worth $40, so it's kind of turned into a let's just see if we can get it running like Musty One does. You end up putting a lot more time and effort into it than probably what it's worth. So now we're in the process. We've got the valve springs back in. Ooh, I need to go through and wipe that down. It's kind of yucky. and we'll put it back together. The jug and stuff's already on the unit outside, and then we'll see what happens. We'll put it together. So cam's back in it. I have to put the cam followers, rockers, whatever you want to call this mess here, and then the cover back on it, and we'll put it back on and hope for the best. These are the injectors for the deuce and a half. The reason that we've held off on it right now is because I'm waiting on injector lines from an outside vendor, because a couple of my injector lines have twisted and they'll probably end up breaking. So that's where we're at right now. I'll probably, not that everybody wants to see me do, you know, monotonous, boring zip ties and routing and all this kind of crap. So I'll probably do a little bit and bring you back and show you the progress on what's going on with this thing. Maybe we'll do a first start, because right now I have the car running on just hot wires from the battery to the coil, because you only need one wire to run. Everything else is, you know, the only other thing I had hooked up was the electric fan, just to keep it cooled down as it was idling and I was making the adjustments. But maybe we'll do a first start on it, and at least you can see something that I'm doing. Okay, so as promised, to not keep you guys too bored, we'll do a quick first start on this thing. Or not a first start, I guess it'd just be a cold start. So we'll hook up the positive battery cable to hunt down the negative one, because there it is, way down there at the bottom. Don't mind my crazy hair. It's Sunday, and I don't really care that much. So we've totally isolated the engine from the rest of the car. So we're going to use these alligator clips. Don't mind the colors, because they're just, all they are is clips. So we'll take, on electronic ignition, you have to feed the electronic module on here, the pickup module, with a positive. So we're just going to put that guy onto the positive side of the coil. So we'll take our clip, probably the other end. Yeah, they're all bent to snot. We're going to clip it on the positive side of the coil, because the other end of my clamp, I bet you can't see nothing with my arm in the way. Let's try it this way. My guess is my head's probably in the way now. Let's make that all pretty. Now, just deal with my arm for a minute. Trust me, it's all I'm doing is clamping this wire onto the end of this post right here out on the coil, maybe. But my alligator clip is so bad that it's really fighting. Today I'll probably end up wiring that up all the way, because I want to be able to move the car around. It's taken up a spot on my lift, so I'm sure that the more this car is here, the more I'll have to use the lift. So we're going to do the same thing on the negative side of the coil, because this is actually the trigger. And all I'm doing here is using the alligator clamp as a clamp. I'm not going to put the other end on anything else. So what I'll do is I'll just clip it to right there somewhere, because all I'm using it to do, or to hold the that wire onto the negative side of the coil. The last one I'm going to use, this is going to be my start trigger. So I'll put it on the solenoid, and we'll just lay it over here somewhere, because all I'm going to do is touch it. So hopefully, I may have to move you guys, because I'm afraid that what's going to happen here is it'll start shaking, and then you won't be able to see anything. So before I do that though, we'll hook up the power. This is our power feed. We'll put him on the positive side of the battery, and then I'll grab you guys, and we will see if we can get her going. The choke's closed, so this is going to be our start trigger. We'll just pop him right there. Hopefully it's out of gear and there's nothing. Well, we should move the vacuum line that's 1,000 miles too long, and we'll go for a start. Ready? I got a little exhaust leak there, but it's running. I don't know what you think of that, but it's running. Oh, we'll open our choke up and see if we can get it to idle down. Whoop. Well, it's not quite warmed up yet, so that's it idling, or was idling. Let's see if we can do that. Well, noisy starter. It's running. That's what it looks like. Might have to adjust those rockers again. It's a little noisy. Still on high idle, so that's what it looks like. We'll turn it off. So to kill it, we'll just do that. So hopefully I didn't teach anybody how to hotwire an old Ford car or truck, but that really is all there is to it. Now, these old ones didn't have column locks or anything like that, so I probably better just shut up. So here we are back to this scene again. We'll bring you back, like I said, when I start playing with the wires, or at least show you how much progress I'm theoretically making, unless I get sidetracked on something else, which is entirely possible. Or who knows, maybe the coronavirus will wipe us all out and we won't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. But yeah, this is what I like to do, obviously, and I'm not going to bore you to tears with all the little intricacies, excuse me, can't talk, of doing all the wires. I will bring you back when I'm actually doing something I think is notable, because most of this is contained on the old destructions right here, and all the wires are marked. So it's just a matter of getting the routing down and wrapping them up pretty and kind of anticipating where they may rub or chafe, and making sure that you put hot wires where hot wires need to go, and not you know, where they might cause a problem and, you know, start a fire, which I guess that's bad, because you see plenty of videos of stuff burning up on the side of the road or wherever. God, man, I just went to a morbid place there. So anyway, starting to babble again. I want to thank you for hanging out with Wrenching with Rob and sticking with me. I've got quite a few more subscribers now. Good to see that. I like doing this stuff, and evidently people like to watch me doing this stuff. Maybe it's, hey, we'll let him do all the work and we'll just watch along and maybe poke fun at it. Just comment, good, bad, whatever. I like the comments, because you know what? I'm no expert when it comes down to this. I just like doing this, and eventually if I keep messing around with it, I end up understanding it. Hopefully I do understand it before I screw it up. So again, I thank you for hanging out. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll bring you back when we have more updates on this one, and hopefully when I get injector lines for the deuce and a half, and we'll do a first start on it. So thank you very much. Good luck to everybody, and we'll talk at you later.